Hey guys, thanks for joining me today, Ross Marcagiani, and another great conversation at revowell.com. Today we're going to be going over food facts. So we're going to be talking about what is really in our food, what makes up our food, what are some concerns that we should be aware of about our food, and how do we, circumvent or navigate around these issues. So let's put our learning cap on and let's dive in. Here we go. So really what we're going to talk about is, what are we really eating? What is in our food that is making it? And the first thing we want to talk about is our genetically modified organisms and our glyphosate. They kind of go hand in hand. So our genetically modified organisms are basically a scientist in some laboratory made this organism or this molecule that could be combined with a plant or a food that basically adapts or blends well with the biology of that substance and allows it to either grow faster, grow quicker, more resistant to disease and death, and just basically can make it live longer. And then one of those things that really commonly known with or associated with GMOs is glyphosate. And so what glyphosate is it's a molecule or an organism that was combined to a seed. The soybean was the first, and now they're finding ways to combine it to the grain. But it's this genetically modified organism that's combined to the seed, and basically what it does is it sucks up all the life, anything that tries to attack it. So if a virus or a insect or some type of fungus tries to attack that plant, it can kill that invader. But while it's doing that, it's also sucking up the nutrient of the plant. So I like to think of glyphosate as like a black hole. It doesn't care what's coming near it, it's just gonna suck anything and everything right into it. And that being said, it's going to be depleting our soil. And I'll get into that second because I'm jumping a couple here, but just be aware that is gonna suck up everything. So it's gonna suck up everything in our soil as well and deplete our soil and deplete the plant or the animal and basically suck up all of its nutrients. So now our plants are gonna be void of nutrients, and we're going to be lacking those essential nutrients that our body needs. Also, people might know glyphosate associated with Roundup. So now this is a chemical that we're spraying around our house or around our buildings to kill these plants and weeds, and we're actually now ingesting and eating this stuff that we spray around our house to kill other things. That we're taking this in, and now it's doing the same thing what it did for the plant, to our body. We're taking that glyphosate in, and it's taking all the nutrients and all the beneficial elements that we're getting from our food, and it's sucking it up and taking it away from our tissue, our cells, and it alters, the way we live, and it increases our risk to disease and, dysfunction. And then basically we're unable to dispose or get rid of that glyphosate. So now that molecule just accumulates in the bloodstream, travels around, and it can accumulate in arteries and cause cardiovascular complications. So it's something that we really want to be aware of, and that we want to make sure that we're staying away from. And then we're going to talk about our pesticides, our herbicides, and our fungicides. So these are going to be sprayed on all the plants to make sure that that they're being protected, and that B, that they can grow quick and they can grow large. So now, plants, some companies do a really good job of getting rid of the pesticides and herbicides and fungicides, but it's impossible to completely get rid of all of it. There's no way that we're able to get rid of all, because the plant sucks these nutrients in, and it's actually in the plant itself. So we're eating these plants that have these pesticides, these herbicides, and these fungicides in it, because it's spraying on top of it, and what the plant's just going to do is, it seems like it's food, so it's just going to suck it in, and it's basically going to consume it. So and then thus us consuming the plant, we're going to be consuming the fungicides, herbicides, and pesticides. And then we'll jump down to soil here because I've already hit upon it. So now that we sprayed these pesticides, these herbicides and fungicides, now that we have covered all these plants in our soil in glyphosate, now we're depleting our soil. And there's a large debate about, is our soil really depleted, or can we still get nutritional value from it? And I think right now we can, but I can tell you for sure, if we keep this blueprint, this agricultural blueprint going, I can tell you for sure that our soil is going to be void of essential nutrients, and we're not going to be getting the nutritional value from our foods that we would be getting in the past. So that's really, really something to be concerned and aware of. Next, we're going to talk about grains and soybeans. So a lot of our animals are being fed these grains. And the reason why we're feeding these grains is because A, it's cheap, it's easy to buy. We can buy a mass amount for a small amount of money. And then B is the shelf life. These are super stable. They're not going to putrefy. They're not going to go bad. They can store this food for their livestock at an enormous length without losing money. And so we end up giving these to our animals and to our livestock. Really good movie out there, or documentary. If this video intrigues you, I absolutely suggest watching it. It will not be a waste of time. Is Food Inc. on on Netflix. Go on Netflix, watch Food Inc. Really, really good documentary. But they went to the point to show these chickens that were being raised. And they're mainly feeding it grains, mainly feeding it antibiotics. I'll quickly touch upon that. Feeding these genetically modified organisms, and in a normal time period that a chicken should grow is roughly around 3 months. And these chickens are grown to full maturation in under 7 weeks because they're feeding them these grains, they're feeding them all these growth hormones, they're feeding these genetically modified organisms, because the three things that the consumer really wants is they want the product to grow as quickly as possible, to put as much fat as possible onto that product, and then to make sure the product stays alive long enough so they can, use the meat from that animal. And that's what these grains, that's what these GMOs do, and the antibiotics. So these animals get so sick. In Food Inc., these animals are growing, like I've already said, they grow at such a quick rate that the bones and the actual organs can't grow and keep up with the rate of growth that the chicken is actually accumulating. So the chicken just ends up laying in its own feces, and it's unable to move, or it actually just dies because of organ failure, and the organs aren't able to keep up with it, and we end up eating, not the dead ones, but the ones who were just only 1 foot in the grave, who get to the kill lots, and we end up eating those. So really, really scary that we're eating these genetically modified foods. We're eating these foods that these animals really probably shouldn't be eating, or at least shouldn't be eating in this amount or this quantity. And then when these animals get sick, we're just pumping them full of antibiotics because the farmers and the food companies want to keep this animal alive long enough so that they can make a product off of it. And so it's really alarming, and we need to be aware of it as a nation. And so now we're going to jump over to what meat really is. So when we talk about our cows, to the basic science term, cows are ruminants, and ruminants basically means to chew excessively. But ruminants, when they come to talk about cows, they have 4 stomachs. And 2 of the stomachs are really important because they're filled with this massive, complex microbiome. And the microbiome has a bunch of microbacteria and, like I just alluded to, the microbiome. And then when we feed, the cows are supposed to graze on grass. And when we give the animals grass, their stomach is meant to digest these grass. They chew it constantly, then they ingest it, and that microbiome breaks down and ferments the grass so that the animal can now live healthy and grow correctly and grow healthy. But what we end up doing is we end up giving these genetically modified organisms, we give these animals grains that are loaded with gluten, which we'll talk about on its whole separate topic. And then we end up just getting these cows really sick because they're not meant to eat these grains. They're meant to eat grass. They're ruminants. So now we give them these grains, and now we have a shift of that microbiome. So the microbiome, basically just think, is their stomach with a bunch of good bacteria. And now we give those animals corn, and it shifts from the good bacteria to the bad bacteria, and we create dysbiosis. So meaning more bad bacteria, less good bacteria. Again, more bad, less good. And how this kind of festers into an issue is because good bacteria are going to eat the bad bacteria and produce more good bacteria. And then vice versa will happen for the bad bacteria. So the bad bacteria are going to eat the good bacteria and produce more bad bacteria, hence shifting to dysbiosis, more bad. And then it ends up creating this, horrible microbiome, and the cows end up getting super sick. We end up, some of the microbacteria that these cows end up producing are certain strands of E. coli. They end up producing salmonella. And the living situations that these cows are in, I mean, granted, the animals, they don't need to be living at the Ritz, but even for these animals, some of these feedlots are just inhumane what these cows are living in. They're just living in their own feces, and they end up rolling around and living in it, and they're unable to move, and they're so sick. And then when we send them off to the kill lots, that these companies are just so concerned about, getting these animals all cut up and getting them sent off as quick as possible, that the cleaning process, or making sure these cows are cleaned or the animals are cleaned correctly, that they're not able to do it as efficiently or correctly. And that's why we have these E. coli and salmonella breakouts, and we have actual documents of people actually dying from these E. coli and salmonella breakouts. So that's pretty scary. And then that being said, so we end up feeding these cows a bunch of growth hormones and a bunch of estrogens. So now we're actually consuming these, the hormones in these altered hormones, these synthetically made hormones, these synthetically made estrogens, and now we're consuming it because we're eating that animal. And now it's throwing off our symphony of hormones. Now our hormones are being altered. We're not able to synthesize our hormones correctly. We're not able to activate or turn down certain hormones, or upregulate or downregulate certain hormones. So now we end up becoming sick, and we end up altering our function because we're eating these animals, and we're eating this vegetation that is altered and been genetically modified. And our bodies just are not adapt and not made to be eating these types of foods. And then let's go back to the antibiotic resistance. So we'll go into, again, the antibiotics just to make sure we cover it correctly and that we understand what's going on. So we end up shifting this microbiome. We end up, remember, these cows eating corn, eating all the corn, all this gluten, all these genetically modified organisms. The cows start to become sick. And like I've already talked about, the main thing they want to do is they want to fatten the cow as quick as possible. They want to have as many cows as possible, and they want to make sure it can live long enough till they can send it off for slaughter. And these cows end up getting so sick because they're eating this diet and corn that they end up having to pump these cows and pump these other cattle full of antibiotics so they can stay alive long enough. And then this is where we come into the issue of antibiotic resistance. So now again, like I said, we are what we eat. We end up eating these antibiotics. We end up eating these foods that are really unhealthy. The food itself before it died was really unhealthy, and it now is unhealthy. And so we get this accumulation, and what happens is our bodies get, we eat this excessively, and our bodies create antibodies from this antibiotic. And so now when we're sick and we really need it, or we have some disease or some kind of issue where we really need to depend on that antibiotic, we go see our doctor and the antibiotic doesn't work because we've now consumed these foods that are loaded with antibiotics. Our body has created antibodies that are now resistant to that antibiotic. So let me explain it again a little simpler. So we get sick, but we've had a life where we've just ate conventional raised meat and vegetation and other cattle and poultry, and even fish now are being fed grains. So we're eating that conventional food and we get really, really sick. We find, there's some issue going on. And now because we've eaten these foods that are loaded with antibiotics, our body, first when we ate that food, said, oh wait, what's this antibiotic? Something's going on here. We need to create antibodies. We need to create soldiers to prevent from this foreign invader attacking our body. Because if the body doesn't recognize it, the immune system doesn't recognize it, it mounts a response, it mounts an immunological response, and it creates antibodies. It creates soldiers that can fight for later. And then we get sick, and we give ourselves the antibiotic, and the antibiotic doesn't do anything because we have those soldiers that were previously made from the first response when we ate that food that's loaded with antibiotics. And now the antibiotic doesn't do anything because we have resistance to the antibiotic. We already have those soldiers that are there waiting to fight when we ingest that antibiotic. So that's a pretty big issue. So really making sure that we're aware that three main things are concerned when it comes to our vegetation, comes to our cattle. The major corporations are concerned about how much can they have, how fast can they grow that product so they can get more turnover, and then how long do we have to keep these animals alive that are really sick in order so we can at least make a product or make a price or make get a financial gain from this animal, even though it's not very healthy. And then lastly, we'll talk about is, I jumped the gun there for 1 second. So like those three topics I just talked about, the way they do it is we genetically modify the organism so that it can be grown on basically any soil, and it can be resistant to basically any invader that comes, so it doesn't die and they don't lose the amount of the product. Then we use grains because it's cheap, it's easy, and we can feed it to the cow and the grains don't go bad. And then we use growth hormones, synthetic hormones, to make the animal grow faster and put more fat on it quicker. And then when we get worried about it dying, we pump it full of antibiotics so the cow can stay alive long enough so that they can get it to the kill lot and make money off of it. And then next we'll go back into the Posilac. So Posilac is going to be another synthetic hormone that we're going to pump to the Jersey cows. The Jersey cows are our milk cows. So what this Posilac is made of, it's made of RBST and RBGH. So RBST stands for recombinant bovine somatotropin, and then RBGH stands for recombinant bovine growth hormone. And these hormones are combined together and they're given to the cow, the milk cow, the Jersey cow, so that it can produce more milk at a quicker rate. So then we end up ingesting this milk, we end up eating or drinking these synthetically made hormones and synthetically made estrogens. So now again, we're just altering our detoxification system, we're altering how we upregulate, downregulate, and synthesize hormones, and we're creating a really sick environment in our body. So that's something we need to be really, really aware about. So how do we circumduct, or how do we get around this issue? So what we can do is, what I do and helps me a ton, is find a CSA. So a community service agriculture, which is really, really important, really, really helpful. And it's basically, you can Google this, look for your local CSA near you, and it's basically a farmer or some type of agriculture that grows its product organically, and it grows it correctly in the way that we should be eating our vegetation and our cattle and our meat and our poultry and our salmon. So really, really good. Go and Google, try and find a CSA near you. If money is an issue, try and team up with maybe your neighbor or maybe someone that doesn't know anything about this, and you can teach this to them, and you can partner up and show them, be a leader and show the way to eat correctly. Partner up with someone, split it down the middle for the cost, and then split the food down the middle. And like I said, you can do meat, you can do vegetation, you can do fruit, you can do fish. Really, really helpful. And then next, maybe plant a garden. And I know, like many of my viewers and myself, we're batting down the hatches right now because we're in winter time. We can't see a blade of grass. We try, and if you have the environment where you have a green room or you have some kind of sun porch or screened in area or temperature. You can regulate the temperature in a certain area. Grow a plant, even if it's just some herbs or maybe a cucumber plant. Something that what's going in there. You're putting the food source in there. What that plant is being fed. So doing something like that. And then when the summer and spring rolls around, go outside, make your own garden, make your own vegetables. Really take your health in your own hands. Then this is my biggest star. I would star this one, meal prep. So meal prep is super important for me. That's how I keep my health going. Every night before I go to bed, I'll make sure I have a really great lunch and a really great dinner. I'll talk about my breakfast in just a second. Really great lunch and a really great dinner. So when lunchtime rolls around or dinner time rolls around, I'm not opening up, my lunch bag, or I'm not going, oh crap, I have nothing to eat, and then I kind of get overwhelmed and I just fall into okay, let's go down the street to Subway or McDonald's or Wendy's. Let's go to the fast food store. That way you can prevent these urges or kind of oh crap moments. You can avoid those moments that's going to cause you to make the bad decisions. Prep and be on top of it. You should be able to react instead of, reacting to the oh crap moment. So that's really important, making sure you meal prep. And then if you end up having that momentary lapse and you end up forgetting, finding the good options, maybe Chipotle, maybe a Chick-fil-A or a Panera, finding those healthy food options. And again, if you do have that momentary lapse and you have no choice, make sure you're being guided and you're going to the correct areas that can set you up for success rather than failure, set you up for healthy eating. So just be aware of that. And then supplementations, vitamins, and shakes. So without a doubt, breakfast is one of the most important meals. And every morning what I'll do a dynamic shake a day from Nutridyne, which is awesome. It has all the essential macronutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, great fat that I need, and it just gets me going. I don't drink coffee, but if I were, that would be like my coffee essentially. It just keeps me going, and it gives me the fuel I can last at least 5 hours till I need my next meal. I typically don't go. I wouldn't suggest going along with that, but that's how satiating it is, and that's how much nutritional value it is. Notice when you eat, if you were, and everyone has, you eat like a hamburger at McDonald's, you can eat the thing in like 30 seconds and you're not even hungry. It feels like you could have, 30 or 40 of them because there's no nutritional value. If you have something that's very nutritionally dense, you're going to end up eating that food and you're just going to be just completely satiated because it has all that essential nutrients that the body wants and needs. And, maybe using some protein bars or various other types of snacks, some nuts, good healthy fats, avocados, making sure you're bringing that along with you. So again, you're not setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up for success and not making those cheats and not making those rash decisions to go to the fast food. And then read, look at your labels. Make sure you know what you're eating. Make sure you know those different names for sugars. And just make sure that you're on top of your game. You know what's in your food. And ask questions. We as a consumer should be able to dictate what's on our plate, not the other way around. So ask questions, be inquisitive, be involved with your food. Your food is your health. So really important that we know what is in our food and what is on our plate. So just to wrap it up real quick, our food, conventionally speaking, is going to have three or four components. So when it comes to the food industry, again, let's be clear, they want to have as much product as possible. They want to get it as big or produce as much as quickly as possible, and they want to prevent it from being sick long enough that they can make a profit off of it. And how they do that, again, genetically modified organisms, can be grown anywhere. We're going to use corn because it's cheap and it's stable, and we can feed our animals with that. It's easy to feed that. And then we're going to produce growth hormones and synthetic hormones to make make our product grow quicker and faster. And then when it gets sick or we're worried about getting sick, we pump it full of antibiotics. So that's the things to be aware of. And we talk about how to circumvent or how to navigate around those issues. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if this intrigues you and you want to dive into it more, go onto Netflix and go on to Food Inc. and watch that documentary. Thank you so much for your time today. And like I always say, if you know anyone that can benefit from this, please share this with them. So like I always say, we're in this together to become healthier and happier. Thank you for your time and have a great day.